Hey guys, Jeffrey from Colorado Camp here. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite fires. I call it the one log fire, and it's minimal effort, minimal calorie exertion. Doesn't take a lot of time. You don't need a lot of materials to do it, and it lets you make a really small survival fire instead of a real big bonfire. So stick around for a little bit. I'll show you the materials that we have and how to build the fire. All right, guys, so you'll see here we have our folding silky saw. It's broken a little bit, but no big deal. It's still going to work. We have our SA5 with a fire starter, or with our fire steel, and then a little bit of fire starting material. And then over here, I know it's called the one log fire. You might be saying those are 3 logs there. I'm basically just showing you the kind of logs that you want. So what we want for this is something that's really good firewood. If it were, if you're going to throw this in a fire to burn really well, what we're going to do is chop it up into a lot of small pieces, baton it some, and make some really like almost kindling out of it. So you can say this has been lying against, I think we found this leaning against another tree. It's been up for a while. It's totally dead. It broke really, really well. It's dried, but it's not dry rotted out. And the most important thing, I can cut it with my saw. In other words, it's not some massive, redwood I got to process. I can cut it with my saw, and I can baton it with my SA5. So this meets the criteria. Nice and thick down here. It's going to make a lot of good firewood for us. I think that's probably a pine, probably a pine actually, it looks like. So kind of the same thing here. This one's a little bit thicker, but I use a big SA5, so it'll still split it. We can still cut it. This would be really great for the one log fire. And other end of the spectrum, this is a little narrower, but it's still going to be fine. The most important thing is that anything that would make good firewood is going to make good kindling for our small fire here. So let's, and then we've got, so our fire lay here, it's really, really small. All we want to do, if this is a survival situation or an emergency situation, I don't want to have a big fire going. I want to have a nice small fire, just big enough maybe to warm my hands up, dry my socks, heat my super shelter up, and boil some water. So stick around and we'll show you what to do here. All right, guys, so I got my setup here. I'm going to use 2 of these logs. One of them is a cross brace here, but the most important thing with this fire is that you can get one good piece of lumber and take it into your shelter with you and process it from everything from this into something that it will take from a spark. So a lot of times people look for like tiny little twigs, things like that, or dry leaves or whatever. That stuff might burn, but when you look at some of these twigs that are lying on the ground, they're just soaked wet the whole way through. There's a lot of surface area there, and it gets wet really easily. So this isn't going to burn as well as some nice dry heartwood from the middle of these. So we've got one piece here. It's probably 3 inches, I guess, in diameter and maybe 6 feet long. And we're going to see how much heat energy we can pull out of this by using it really efficiently. So the first thing we're going to do is cut a few pieces for kindling. So let's call those 1 palm width, 4 inches, 5 inches, whatever it is. So we're going to cut a palm width off here. So again, I'm not using some massive piece of wood. It's a nice small piece that my silky saw just destroys and goes through really quickly. So I'm going to get 2 or 3 pieces like that so I can have enough small stuff, and then we'll cut a few longer pieces. So. All right, guys, so my lovely assistant helped out with some of the cutting a little bit here, but it took probably 5 minutes. We took that whole piece of that whole log, and we made a bunch of like 6 to 8 foot pieces, and then a number of like 4-inch pieces. And now what we're going to do is process almost all this into kindling. We can make our log cabin fire. This stuff will take really, really easy with some of our tinder, the petroleum jelly soaked cotton balls that we use. And you'll be able to see that if we had, a big fire, I could throw this on there and it'd be gone in 20 seconds. It's not a lot of fuel, but we're going to use it very, very efficiently and slowly feed it in there. And it's going to have a lot of surface area, so it'll burn nice and hot and quickly. And it'll boil our water, warm our hands a little bit, do whatever we got to do. And then when we're done, we won't have to use a lot of material and make a big, huge fire. We just made a nice, small, efficient fire, boiled some water, took care of our survival emergency, and we're back on the road ready to go. All right, so we've got those 3-inch pieces here. We're going to really process those down 3 to 4 inches, whatever size they are. Doesn't have to be specific. We want to process these. We want nice, small pieces here, a lot of surface area. It's really going to dissipate that heat all around it, and it's going to catch really, really well. So all of these smaller pieces that we have, we're going to cut into more pieces. So I'm just quartering them, then I'll get all of them done, then I'll go back again. And I would say that you want some of them, maybe even the diameter of like pencil lead, so whatever that is, a few millimeters, but fairly small. As you'll see when you build that fire, we're going to make a log cabin, like a matrix almost. So 4 or 5 really thin pieces, and then a little bit of space, and 4 or 5 pieces that way, and the other way, and the other way. And all of that surface area allows the heat from the cotton ball to go up, and a lot of wood is being exposed to that heat, and it catches really, really well. Certainly better than something like this off the ground, some twig that's half rotted the whole way through. So I'm going to split this stuff down, and we'll get back right before we start the fire. All right, guys, so you can see all that whole piece of that big piece of wood processed down into not very much here. So again, I can make one fire lay and burn all that really, really quickly. Instead, what I'm going to do is make a fire lay, just have a nice small fire. I can keep feeding that stuff into it, and I'm going to boil some water and make some bush tea here. So you can see I split these. Some of the stuff, almost all the little ones, I split to about the same size, pretty small, maybe the diameter of a pencil. I have some that are even thinner than that, so I can feed in there. Got some petroleum jelly soaked cotton balls as my fire starter. And then, so I'm going to put this on the ground. One of the logs I split into half, and I'm going to use that piece there. So this is going to be, pull this apart some. Good, so nice big piece. It'll catch a spark really well. That'll burn for a little bit. So I like to build a log cabin around there. I think that it gives you the best opportunity to have, like I was saying a second ago, to have a number of pieces sitting this way, and then a number of pieces sitting. I'm getting attacked by wild animals here. I'm sorry. This is just part of the parcel of living in the woods. There's wild dingoes. I think this is perhaps a wolf. I give him some love. Okay, now get out of here. Go get to this book. Go on, wild wolf. Go on.
Get over here.
I've attracted more of them. All right, well, it's just the hazards of being in Colorado. I think that was a puma maybe there that went through there. This is what it is. So, all right, so I like to make the log cabin fire so I can build everything up. You get a good mixture of protection from wind, but still allow kind of what I call the chimney, or what is called the chimney effect. So it pulls cold air in. Cold air has more oxygen in it, so it burns well, and it rises and it combusts. So, being attacked again, I apologize for this. Called the game warden about all these animals up here. So we're going to do our middle piece, and then some of the longer ones, or the larger ones I should say, out here, and then another layer of these. The most important thing with this is not to smother it. You can use all of this, and maybe I will, and I'll show you kind of the one match fire, so you don't have to light it one time. But the most important thing, you can have a lot of stuff on here, but you can't smother it. It's got to have good airflow through there. I'll try to get some close-ups here in a little bit, but like I said, you've got some of these pieces here, and you'll see the flames leaping up in between each one of them, and all of that is getting superheated. Pyrolysis is going on, and it's getting ready to catch fire. So do one more layer up. And then we're going to start putting some of our smaller pieces there. So you don't want to crowd that tinder. You want to make sure it's all combusting. It has a lot of heat and a lot of air. And then we'll just do one layer of these 3-inch pieces going the whole way across. Some of these I might split these a little bit more. I'll just set them off to the side here. But your first layer, you want the narrowest ones. So as I said, a lot of surface area, and you want them close enough that the fire and the air can go in between them, but not so close that you're making just one piece of, one jumbled piece. So it's here. Switch this. Good. So you can see this really well here. So we've got maybe an inch of space in between the tinder and the first layer, but everything that's around that tinder is still going to burn. We've got these dried pieces here and here. So all of this stuff is eventually going to start burning, and as the fire burns up, which they have a tendency to do, it's going to start catching all of this. So our next layer, we're going to use some longer ones, still some nice and thin ones. So another thing I'm doing is I'm moving some access so I can light that tinder in there, right? So I want to be able to come from this angle with whatever it is. I might just pull some of that out of there, like a small piece, catch that, and then use 2 of these as a chopstick and put it back in there. But you want to have some access to that. Obviously, you got to get in there and get some get started. So I'm going to continue to build this for a second and pull a little of this out. Then when we come back, I'll have a little bit more set up. Then we'll strike it and we'll see how well my fire burns. One of the gold standards I use for a fire lay, you should be able to light the tinder and then walk away. It should be all set it and forget it. So let's see if we can make that happen. So for this one, I'm not really doing primitive skills. So if you have a ferro rod, that's cool. I like my ferro rod to be made by Bic. They make really good ones. And I'm just going to quickly get this tinder going here. Boom, there we go. And by there we go, I mean it's not going to. So. All right, so as I said earlier, you can see there's a little bit of wind pushing it, but all of that fire is going to rise through all of that dead space in there and start combusting all this wood here. So there's a nice sized piece of tinder. You can see some black smoke starting to rise right now. Seems to want to go out that way, so I'll put a few pieces there to trap some of that heat. So you can again see there's a lot of, right now the wind is blowing obviously pretty hard from downhill. As this heat starts to spread, it'll create its own little microclimate and it should start rising straight up a little bit more. But I'm pretty cool with this right now. It looks like it's building into our fire nest here a little bit. So let's see how it catches. So you can see I've got wood split up. I've got some more small pieces here, some bigger pieces, kind of my standard, my 6 to 8 inch long stuff. It's split to like thicker than a pencil. And all of this is what I'm going to feed in there as I'm boiling and heating the water on here. All right, guys, so that didn't work so well because we used pine wood. I guess I could just edit all that out and start with aspen and act like I didn't have the mistake, but there's no ego in it, you know. I tried something, didn't work that well. We've got aspen instead of pine this time. So the same concept, we're going to split it really well. We're going to make a bunch of small pieces, catch it with a piece of the cotton ball tinder, and let that burn. So same thing, we've got aspen now. You can tell it's gray. You can always tell out here there's no dig marks in there from the pine beetle infestation that we have, so that's a good way to tell. And just that gray appearance. So aspen works really good, and this way you'll get a chance to see how aspen performs compared to that pine that we were using a minute ago. So we're gonna pause really quickly while I split all this up, or my assistants help me split this up, and we'll come back and we'll try this again with some aspen and see what happens. All right, guys. So same thing. We just built that. The same fire lay. We've got the cotton ball protected from the ground with 2 pieces of wood to hold it up near where our fire nest is. We've got a lot of nice small pieces here, a lot of surface area there. You can see a lot of dead space in there, so a lot of oxygen. And I've got a good stack of, this is aspen right here, that's the pine, and this is aspen as well. So I've got a lot of backup wood. So as it works, or as it starts burning, I can put pieces in there if I want to, or as I need to. So just go in here and catch that again. All right, good black smoke, so that's usually a good sign that the petroleum is burning and it's starting to catch some other stuff. And when you look from, like, maybe get a shot from straight down in there, you can see a lot of that negative space in there, that dead space, and the fire is just rushing in between it. That's really exactly what we want to be happening. We got that chimney effect. I'm putting this more stuff on there, but really a lot of space in between there. I want this heat to be trapped all through our tinder. It's already catching already. You can see how superior. I did this intentionally, actually, of course, so that you could see how superior aspen was There's already aspen burning down there, and I mean this is going. There's fire up here already. So if we wouldn't have had that totally planned demonstration of how bad pine was, then this would have happened, almost like that. So now we've got a really good fire here. This is definitely catching. When I talk about the stages of fires, I like to use them like in size context of balls, like sports balls. Not so. There's like the golf ball size, which is what the tinder is, and that's really just designed to be drying everything else and making it work. Then we get the softball size. We're at right now. Our tinder has caught. And if this were doing a traditional fire lay, we have a lot of stuff around there trying to catch all that. Then when you get to the soccer ball size, now you've got a pretty well-established fire. So in a survival situation, what we're trying to do, the kind of scenario, I guess, that would go with this, we've been hiking all day, and it's towards the end of the day, we got a little bit lost, or I don't believe that term, but you're taking a creative interpretation of the trail. And now we realize the sun's going down, but we're still going to make it back to the car. We're not going to have to camp out here for the night. I don't want to build a big shelter. I just want to get hot, get some hot stuff into me, maybe dry, warm my hands up, dry some gloves, whatever it is. So we're going to keep this a nice small fire. We're going to keep feeding it as we need to. I'm going to let this go until all of this burns and collapses on itself, and then I can just kind of add more as I need to. But we want to have essentially here a fire that's more coals than yellow fire. So we're going to have our clean canteen sitting on here to boil it. Really, really nice warm fire right now. I mean, it's probably mid to low 30s out right now. But this is certainly enough to keep my fingers warm. And you can see I used a huge amount of cotton ball in there, which I think is a common thing. But that cotton ball is still great. I'll knock the whole thing down real quickly here. That cotton ball is still burning in there. So I could have used way, way less cotton ball and still had a good effect. So since I knocked that down, I'm just going to rebuild my log cabin on top of there. Same principles, a lot of air. Obviously, this is not good. Unless you upset the fire guides. But so I'm just going to keep feeding this and keep letting it burn just about this height until I get a nice bed of coals. And then I'm going to start putting some bigger, longer pieces in there. Put my clean canteen up here and start boiling some water. So I'm just going to play with this for a few minutes, and then we cut back. This is going to be burning really, really well, and we're going to be right at the stage to start putting some aspen in there. But you can tell, really good fire lay. All this stuff is burning as soon as it gets in there. I'm just throwing pieces on there where I can because I know it'll combust. Good airflow throwing in the airflow between those two rocks rising up in there. And you can kind of hear that, like that sound of fire, that's just the sound of proper combustion. Air is being pulled in there. Cold air gets sucked in, it rises, it expands, it combusts, burns our wood. Really, really good fire lay. So we'll come back to you in just a few seconds here, and we'll be ready to start boiling some water and feed this, and I can show you the rest of this fire. All right, so that fire's been burning for maybe about 10 minutes or so. It was a real nice ball of fire, so everyone was hanging out and warming up some. And now that we've got it's burned down a little bit, we've got a good bed of coals here. So I burned it really well to make sure we have this good bed of coals so it doesn't go out on me. And now I've got my clean canteen. That's a non-insulated one. You don't want to use a double-walled one. It doesn't work that well. And we're just going to set it here. And now we're going to build the fire kind of around it a little bit. So I'll put a few pieces here. We've got those nice red hot coals underneath it that's providing some heat. So it's not going to take a huge amount. We're just going to continue to feed around there. So again, we're just making a really efficient, small fire that's going to do what we want it to do rather than having to make a big bonfire out here. So put that on there. The wind is really cooperating, blowing from one direction, pushes there, catches all this stuff on fire. I think we showed this in one of our videos, but if not, the way that we're doing this, we've got just a little piece of wood. Looks like a slip knot on there, or a clove hitch or whatever, as long as it's a right angle knot. So you've got the piece of wood at a 90-degree angle to the rope. And this is big enough to fit down in the mouth of the clean canteen. Don't want to cut. When you pull it back up, it'll catch in the inside lips, and then you can just adjust it a little bit. So we're going to leave it here until it boils. It's only about halfway full, but just for demonstration. And as we're doing this, again, the most important thing here is how little wood we're using. We got a lot of pine here that we did as well, but we only used maybe 2 pieces, 3 pieces this big. So if you had one aspen log, you drug that in your shelter with you, and you cut this, you processed it, and instead of having to look for all these little twigs and scraps, you got a fire going just with that log and your fire starter. You still got a nice small fire that I can sit close to, stay nice and warm. Even though it's kind of a windy day, it's really, really toasty warm here, and I'm boiling that water. So we don't have a big fire lay. We didn't have to get big logs. We didn't have to use an axe or anything. One log, a saw, a good stout bush knife for splitting, and some tinder and a little bit of knowledge. And here we are boiling water with a nice small fire. So I think that having a small fire is one of the skills that probably a lot of people that go into the backcountry don't really develop. They're so used to going out and doing a big bonfire with their buddies or whatever, which is totally cool. But you have to know the difference between a survival fire and a hang out with your buddy fire. This is a really good survival fire. So we're just going to burn this for a little bit longer until we can get this water boiling. And as I feed the logs, I'm just going around it like this. And it'll burn right up and it'll provide heating the whole way along the side of this. And it probably won't take too long at all for this to boil. Some caveats. Obviously, this you're going to have a liter of boiling water. If that falls, it's going to be all over the coals here that can put that out, or you can burn yourself. So obviously you want to be careful with this stuff. And you don't want to build this massive log around there and just bury it in this, mountain of fire. So nice bed of red coals it's sitting on top of. Good wind flow in there, and we're slowly feeding sticks to it. And we probably used maybe a third of the aspen that we cut, let alone the pine. And now that we're at this structure or this stage in our fire building, we can use some of this pine. So now the pine will work really well. Just the amount of thermal energy it takes to get aspen going versus pine. But now that we have this going and a lot of heat, we can put this pine on there and burn that as well. So we're still using some of that pine. But again, really efficient fire, just a few pieces of wood properly processed, and now we have a nice warm fire. We're not going to leave a big nasty fire ring in the woods. You can bury this right underneath the 2 or 3 rocks that you use. And so we'll take a little pause, and when we come back, that'll be boiling hot. You can see we'll still have a ton of firewood left over. All right, so here we are. We're still using that first amount of firewood that we had cut. That water is like roaring boiling in there. So we'll use our little toggle and grab that off there. So this is another life-saving thing, man. I think this is like so easy to make with a piece of paracord. If you were worried about getting your paracord exposed to heat, you can make them with like snare wire if you want to when you're home, and you can take it with you. But being able to use your canteen, just your metal bottle, to boil water, and then really easily, just like this, to go in there and pull it right off, that's a really great skill. So now you can see we've been burning this fire for long enough to boil 3/4 of a liter of water at least. We've been warm the whole time. It's burning that wood really, really quickly, so it turns heat into our fuel into heat really, really quickly. So it's nice and hot here, and like I said, it's in the 30s here. We're staying really warm by this. There's a lot of wind blowing on here, but that's pretty much it. So again, you want to have the ability to make a small fire really quickly. Control that small fire as you build it. Use everything that you split as kindling. Instead of using big logs in there, really big thick logs, you want to just have kindling that you're slowly feeding and building around there. So really efficient fire. Didn't take us more than an hour from beginning to end. And that was with even using some of the wrong wood as an experiment there. But you can see we've still got a lot of wood left over here. Minimal effort. Boiled some water, got warm, dried our gloves, dried our socks, got our fingers warm again. And then I'm going to keep feeding this just to see how long it takes. But when I'm done, we'll go back and I'll show you how little trace evidence there is of this, if you will, or footprint or whatever. And you can just put some rocks back over all that coals and make sure it's out before you get out of there. So, we'll come back in just a few minutes. This is all burned out, and I'll show you about how long all that wood burned and what the footprint looks like when we're done with it.
All right, guys, so I'm out here next to Jeff's fire. I got him out doing some real work instead of playing in front of the camera. But you can see he was talking about the footprint it was going to make. This is a little tiny fire. It really doesn't take up much room at all. So, and it's not deep at all. It just maybe not even an inch deep with all the ash. That was enough to warm us up, to boil water. and now, you know, it went out, burn out pretty fast. We don't have any hot coals. We don't have any fears of starting a forest fire. Still, you know, we might want to kick a little bit of dirt on here, stomp on it, make sure there are no hot coals, and then throw some dirt on it. And now we're good to go. We're ready to roll on and move on to our final destination. But that's it. That's the video, or that's, you know, that's the one log fire. Hopefully you learned something and enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.
All right, guys. So thanks for staying tuned today and seeing what we did here. So the most important things to take away from this, all of the hypothermia conditions that we've discussed in some of the blogs in our previous videos, you want to take care of as early as you can. You don't have to. You should master this skill of having a small fire, because you can know in the backcountry that if you need a fire, you don't have to build a big gigantic fire or chop down trees or get the chainsaw and cut logs. You should own this skill so you can make a fire with your portable saw and your bush knife really quickly, that you can sit near, warm your hands, prevent some of that hypothermia, boil some water, and very quickly get this survival fire going. So I recommend practicing this a bunch. There's a lot of fire stuff that you can do, but we practice using tinder for this one that you make at home, the petroleum jelly and cotton ball stuff. So that's a good skill to have. Using your bushcraft to baton, and using your knife to cut, your saw to cut small pieces of wood. So this fire is really going to help you out when there's a downpour outside and you want to get back in your shelter and start working on stuff. Or you can sling up a tarp really quickly, get that 1 or 2 logs, and you know how to process that really big, thick pieces of wood like this and stuff like this into kindling without having to worry about gathering stuff off the ground. You know the heart of this is going to be nice and dry, and with a few cuts and a few splittings, you can have a big pile of kindling like this that burns really quickly. Boil some water and get you warm in the backcountry. So I hope that helps. Practice this skill a bunch. This is one of the life-saving skills that I really recommend. And so go out there, get some bush time, and be safe.